From Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South, the morning news brief on Telesur English. We start this new edition right now. The dialogue between the Venezuelan government and the opposition has stalled. Hopes have been high of an agreement at Thursday's fifth round of talks in the Dominican Republic. The government's delegation arrived as planned, but the opposition decided not to show up. The head of the government team said the opposition's pretext that Venezuela's interior minister had accused them of revealing the whereabouts of an armed group.
It doesn't matter. Peace is much more important to us, and the coexistence among Venezuelans. They threaten us with sanctions. It doesn't matter to us. We will continue with these talks. What we won't do is a step back from the development of our social, political, electoral, and economic agenda. The plans of the Bolivarian government of President Nicolás Maduro to advance with political, social, and economic issues continue without delay.
One of the lead mediators for the talks, the former Spanish Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, called on all sides and the EU to keep pushing for an agreement.
The situation in Venezuela demands the greatest effort, the highest responsibility. I appeal to the international community. I appeal to all governments. I appeal to the European Union so they are up to the responsibility that's being presented and so they contribute, so the government and opposition are able to arrive at an agreement.
The government of the Dominican Republic has been facilitating the dialogue. The spokesperson for its foreign ministry said they would now try to fix another date when the talks can be reconvened.
We only have information that we are looking for a new date to be able to carry out the talks, and that the colleagues of former Spanish Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, the President of the Dominican Republic, Danilo Medina, are aware of the situation and have been following up on this with the foreign ministers from Bolivia and Nicaragua who are here in the Dominican Republic, who, along with the Dominican Foreign Minister Miguel Vargas, will be reconsidering when the most convenient date would be, in the shortest time possible, to be able to reschedule the talks.
Now we go to our correspondent from Caracas, Freddie Gillingham, to give us more information about the negotiations.
So unfortunately, the dialogue between the opposition and the government did not take place today in Santo Domingo. The opposition cancelled in the last minute. They did not attend the meeting. This isn't the first time, however, but they did give various points why they weren't attending. Most controversially, they rejected that they gave any information on the whereabouts of the fugitive Oscar Perez, who was killed in a raid on a terrorist cell just several days ago. Ministers in Santo Domingo are trying to negotiate a new set of dates as we speak. However, let's not get our hopes up too much. Let's just remember that back in 2015, when the opposition won a majority in the parliamentary elections, they walked out and cancelled the entire dialogue with the government altogether. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
That was Freddie Gillingham from Caracas. With Peru immersed in its worst political crisis for years, Pope Francis will pay a courtesy visit to President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski in a few hours from now. The Pope was greeted by the President when he arrived at Lima Airport late on Thursday, and by modest crowds as he drove into the capital. Francis will travel later on Friday to the Amazonian city of Puerto Maldonado, where he will meet indigenous representatives. As in Chile, the rights of the indigenous people will continue to dominate the Pope's agenda in Peru.
Practitioners of Andean rituals have gathered in Lima with one objective. They want Pope Francis to make amends for the Church's takeover of the sacred Inca temple, Coricancha. The Spanish demolished the temple in Cusco after taking the gold they found and built the Catholic Santo Domingo Church on top of its ruins.
We are members of the Atum Ayu Coricancha, a spiritual Andean brotherhood, and we came here to Lima specifically to bring a message, a letter on account of the arrival of Pope Francis, to whom we ask very kindly to begin a horizontal dialogue with the representatives of our Andean people who practice their ancestral worldview, and that this dialogue allows us to recover our temple of the sun, the sacred Coricancha, that has been in the hands of the Catholic Church for more than 500 years.
These believers say, as the Church has the Vatican, their Vatican is Coricancha. Meantime, another indigenous community, the Iseha, is also making its case for land rights. They want Pope Francis to mediate their battle for ancestral lands that have been threatened by rampant gold mining, illegal logging, and drug trafficking. The Iseha are reportedly Peru's smallest indigenous group, and they believe they have been sidelined.
We have been held back for some time from free transit through the forest, where our fathers and grandfathers work around. Now they're asking us for papers and payments to live here. Before, nobody asked us our name, and this isn't what we want. The oldest among us don't understand such a word. This was all our home.
Members of the Iseha community will raise their concerns with the Pope on Friday. They will be part of some 3,500 people from indigenous groups in Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil to meet with Pope Francis.
The Peruvian Catholic Church has been led by Opus Dei and other conservative forces for decades. But with the visit of a more progressive Pope, some believers hope the Church will begin to confront topics that have been taboo.
Days before Pope Francis arrived in Lima, the Vatican intervened in the solemnization, dismissing its director because of the crisis caused by sexual abuses committed by its founder, Luis Figari. The local church declined to comment to the press.
Cardinal Tobin, who was in charge, now it's being led by a Colombian bishop who is a commissioner, would be the technical word. But I come back to the Pope Mobile. I come back to the Pope's visit. This is a before and after.
A before and an after. The Peruvian Church, that has been led by Opus Dei bishops for 3 decades, faces one of its worst crises because of the cases of pedophilia, but it is still protected by the Vatican. However, Pope Francis has distanced himself from the internal power core and takes a position which, for many, it is the beginning of a change in the Catholic Church.
Pope Francis has also talked about the LGBT community, which he doesn't condemn and says therefore the Church shouldn't as well. This is an important statement, and also the topic of abortion, which the Pope has pointed out cannot be so inflexible and hard with the women who have had abortions. But without going against John Paul II's Gospel of Life, nor the Roman Catholic ordinances in any of these themes.
Even the most conservative in the region support the Pope's position.
What do you think of Pope Francis? Do you think his speech is more open-minded than the Peruvian Church?
Of course, it's a total innovation.
Pope Francis is Jesuit and has a much more inclusive speech, I will say, and he is open to different views. The Peruvian Catholic Church might be more conservative with a more classic doctrine.
On his next visit, Pope Francis is expected to refer to topics as the environment's protection, gender equality, respect for the LGBTI community, among other controversial topics for the Peruvian Church.
And the Pope took time to make a few wishes come true on his trip. He officiated the marriage of 2 flight attendants working on the papal plane. The couple told the Pope they had been married in a civil service, but the religious ceremony was cancelled because a powerful earthquake struck Chile that fateful day in 2010. The quake damaged their parish church in Santiago. And in Iquique, Pope Francis broke protocol and got off the Pope Mobile to help a policewoman who was thrown off her horse as he passed. Francis stood by the woman's side until an ambulance arrived to take her away. And we'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Haitians have gathered outside the U.S. Embassy in Port-au-Prince to protest against the comments made by U.S. President Donald Trump, who used vulgar language when referring to Haitian immigrants. Special status given to about 59,000 Haitian immigrants will end next year, following a Trump administration ruling last month. Protesters also condemn U.S. foreign policy towards Caribbean countries.
When we consider war, exploitation, domination, occupation, coups, racism, there are so many weapons used by the United States against the countries of the Caribbean and Africa. U.S. foreign policy on Haiti never changed. It's been that way for 200 years.
A baby has been killed and over a dozen more injured at Rio de Janeiro's Copacabana on Thursday night. According to police, a car lost control and drove into beachgoers, injuring at least 15 people, with 12 of them being taken to the hospital. According to local press, the 41-year-old driver claims he had an epileptic attack behind the wheel, causing the car to lose control. He was detained by the police. At least 5 people have been killed in Mexico City after a train derailed in a densely populated area. The cargo train went off the rails in the suburb of Ecatepec at around 6:30 in the morning. The last car of the train crashed into a house along the tracks, killing 5 members of a family. The cause of the derailment is still unknown. And still in Mexico, people are speaking up regarding the high cost of the upcoming elections. Our correspondent in Mexico City explains.
The National Electoral Institute has begun preparations to undertake what are now believed to be the most expensive elections in Mexico's history.
I don't think such a large amount of money is necessary. The budget should be rethought.
I think it's an unnecessary expense. The money will be wasted. I think it could definitely be used for other things.
Se escribe Miade, pero se dice Mid. Ahora el apellido Meade te lo vas a encontrar por todo el país.
The Electoral Institute will disperse over $300 million to political parties just for campaigning and publicity expenses. Today we know that in 2012, every party exceeded their authorized campaign budget, which generated sanctions that were not applied until the end of 2017.
El Partido Verde la tiene. No al abuso en las cuotas.
During this year's elections, people will vote for the president, 128 senators, 500 representatives, and 9 governors.
Los gastos electorales.
Electoral expenses in Mexico are wholly superfluous, even when compared to similarly sized countries, and results in Mexico are always conflicting and debatable.
Similar, un poco más.
Over the past 30 years, elections in Mexico have been mired by fraud accusations by political parties and individuals, a notion the Electoral Institute has been unable to rid themselves of.
Las propuestas que se han orientado en ese sentido.
Proposals given to fix this issue haven't been presented properly. Electronic fraud is still feared. Let's remember Mexico has had experience with system failures, especially back in '88.
Informáticos, sobre todo en el año 88.
On July 1st, nearly 80 million Mexicans will cast their ballot in 155,000 polling places all over the country.
Se estima que durante las elecciones.
It's been estimated that the 2018 elections will cost about $2.4 billion, a figure that's very close to the cost of rebuilding every home destroyed during last September's earthquake.
Pablo Pérez García, Telesur, Ciudad de México.
Indigenous leader Maria Magdalena Kukchuk, famous for her activism against a Guatemalan mining company, has been arrested. Our correspondent Santiago Boton has more.
Indigenous leader Maria Magdalena Kukchuk was arrested by the National Police after doing a translation at a hearing for a land claim. The court charged her of misappropriation and threats. Maria Magdalena Kukchuk is a recognized Mayan leader in the Izabal region and is also part of the resistance movement against CGN mining company, Pronico. Various social organizations have issued a statement demanding her prompt release. The Rigoberta Menchú Foundation has asked authorities to guarantee her physical integrity and respect her constitutional rights.
And the leader of Colombia's Revolutionary Alternative Forces of the Commons, or FARC, plans to run in next year's presidential elections. Rodrigo Londoño, better known as Timochenko, says he is committed to bringing peace, but observers warn it will be challenging for the FARC to transform from a guerrilla group into a political party. Meanwhile, the electoral process is underway in Colombia, with security being the key issue for voters.
Colombia's electoral machine has been put in motion. Over the past few hours, the National Registry confirmed which candidates collected enough signatures to be eligible for the upcoming presidential elections. Out of 11 hopefuls, 3 were deemed ineligible.
We now have presidential candidates, those who registered political parties and those who collected signatures. Only 3 candidates did not collect enough signatures. Nevertheless, we've got a wide spectrum of candidates.
Moreover, political coalitions are taking shape. On Tuesday, presidential hopefuls Gustavo Petro, Clara López, and Carlos Caicedo declare they will organize a referendum to determine who will be the candidate of their leftist coalition.
The coalition we introduced yesterday is closely attached to the peace accord, but it also believes in a new economic model that goes beyond our extractivist doctrines over oil, coal, and gas. We want to pose a profound democratic reform for Colombia.
Meanwhile, all over the country, the road to congressional elections is being smoothed over. Yet, many people still face uncertainty and political violence. Over the past few days, pamphlets have been circulating which threaten alternative candidates, in particular those from FARC and social leaders.
The question is, which is the democracy we want? We need to guarantee the voice and participation of sectors that have yet to receive those guarantees which other sectors have traditionally enjoyed.
On Tuesday, 2 former FARC combatants were murdered in Antioquia. The newly formed political party claimed the murders happened hours after the victims held a meeting with community to boost their campaigns in the region.
A country that's moving forward under a peace accord cannot afford to build its democracy over the grace of the opposition and of those who decided to join the side of lawfulness and democracy.
Inevitably, peace will be at the center of the upcoming elections. But this time, the question will be, what kind of democracy does Colombia want? A far-reaching one that protects the lives of those with critical or dissident thinking, or one that's based on political violence?
Dominica's Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries will distribute grants to help farmers restore their businesses. $7 million in funds will be administered by the Aid Bank. The money is meant to ease the burden on farmers who suffered tremendous losses from Hurricane Irma in 2017.
The government proposes to do so by commenting United States $7 million, equivalent to 18,817,400 Eastern Caribbean dollars from funds provided by the World Bank under the Disaster Vulnerability Response Project, DVRP.
Jamaican Prime Minister Andrew Holness has declared a state of emergency in the parish of St. James to address rising crime. This means security forces operating in that parish now have extraordinary powers, and some public rights of civilians have been suspended. The Prime Minister says crime and violence is escalating at such a rate that public safety is endangered.
We have declared a state of public forces are expected.
Let's go back to Peru and the visit by Pope Francis. After traveling to the Amazon region, he'll be going to Trujillo in the north, which was badly hit by floods last year. Thousands of families lost their homes and haven't received help to this day. Veronica Insausti went to hear what the hopes of the people for the Ponte's visit.
Buenos Aires is one of the poorest districts in Trujillo. It has 30,000 residents, and more than half of them were badly affected by intense rain caused by the coastal El Niño phenomenon. This forsaken place will be visited by Pope Francis.
Mr. Pope will visit us. Oh, he should give us some support, right?
Maybe he can see how we live and hopefully do something for us.
People seem to have lost hope after a year without receiving any help. They survive among the debris, waiting for the next rainy season, which might sweep away what's left of their property. One of the 130,000 families made homeless now lives here after the coastal El Niño phenomenon destroyed so many buildings in the north of Peru. This one is an example of that. And here, people live in deplorable conditions without light or drinking water. The authorities haven't done a single thing to help. The promises of rebuilding made by the central, regional and local governments vanished away with time, until a few weeks ago when an urban planning company arrived.
They have arranged some of the piles of dirt just because the Pope is coming. They just cleaned the path through which he will pass. They cleaned that track, but the rest is still a mess.
Everything is destroyed, abandoned. We are abandoned. They have just invested money in fixing some holes so the Pope can pass through here, but they forgot about the rest.
From the $250 million allocated a year ago to rebuilding work in the North Buenos Aires district has only received paving for its main avenue, which is where the Pope Mobile will pass. But not even this holy visit brings back the people's faith in miracles.
Miracles? There are no miracles anymore. He should do something or tell the people responsible to do something, but they won't do it. This is just a thing of the moment.
They hope Pope Francis will bring a message that can stir the awareness of the political groups that have forsaken their people.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Thousands of Kurds marched on Thursday to protest against Turkish preparations to invade the Syrian city of Afrin. This comes days after Turkey allegedly placed missile systems that point towards Afrin along the Turkish border. The district of Afrin is home to about 500,000 civilians, a population which has doubled with refugees after fighting in other areas of the country. Joining the protests were hundreds of Kurds in Greece who marched through the streets of Athens, denouncing Turkey's plans to bombard the northern Syrian region. The protesters danced to traditional Kurdish music on the Syntagma Square while holding banners and chanting slogans. Now let's have a look at some other news from around the world.
U.S. senators adjourned late Thursday without voting on a bill to fund the government beyond Friday. Senators will resume the debate this Friday morning. Lawmakers had two options: agree to a month temporary spending measure known on Capitol Hill as a continuing resolution, or shut down the government until funding could be agreed on. A deadly storm in northwest Europe has killed at least 9 people. Violent gales battered the Netherlands, Germany and Belgium, toppling trees and trucks, bringing down power lines and grounding aircraft and halting road and rail traffic. One of the continent's busiest travel hubs, Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, was forced to briefly cancel all flights as winds gusted up to 140 kilometers an hour. Thai cops have nabbed a Pakistani citizen who may have been involved in supplying fake passports to Islamic State operatives. 52-year-old Muhammad Iqbal was arrested in mid-January in a Bangkok suburb in possession of Singaporean and Indian fake passports, as well as plates and laminates to forge entry visas to France, Italy and Spain.
It was only for the Islamic State group. People will think he only did it for the ISIS, but he sold the fake passports to anyone who wanted to buy, made to order, so it can be used by anybody in any kind of occupation.
A Russian teenager attacked a group of younger students with an axe, injuring at least 7 people before setting his school on fire in Siberia. Earlier this week, investigators opened a criminal case into a knife attack that injured 15 people at a school in the city of Perm. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has announced on Facebook that she is expecting her first baby in June, making her the country's first leader to give birth while in office, and only the second elected world leader after Pakistan's Benazir Bhutto, who gave birth to a daughter in 1991 while she was the Prime Minister.
I am not the first woman to multitask. I'm not the first woman to work and have a baby. I know these are special circumstances, but there'll be many women who will have done this well before I have.
The 12th legislative session has begun in Catalonia's parliament with a new speaker sworn in, but with 2 of its legislators still in jail. Our correspondent Joan Ortiz reports.
Headlines show all possible paths for the new parliament. Newspapers in Madrid found Roger Torrent's speech after the inauguration ceremony had a conciliatory tone. On the other hand, news in Barcelona highlights his desire to recover the institutions that were taken over by the Spanish government through Article 155. According to Torrent, the first step for the parliament is to find a president of Catalonia.
The next step will be for the leader of the parliament to begin a round of talks with all parliamentary groups to know their proposals for candidates for president of the Generalitat.
There is judicial pressure from Madrid. A judge hasn't ruled on the request to free Jordi Sanchez, Jordi Cuixart and Joaquim Forn, even though they are elected legislators in an established parliament. We spoke to lawyer Albert Torra, who said there is a political motive behind keeping the lawmakers behind bars.
The real reason behind keeping them temporarily in prison is to prevent them from holding their position for which they were voted. This judicial decision, from my point of view, directly infringes the International Treaty of Civil and Political Rights, subscribed to by the Spanish state as part of its constitution.
Meanwhile, the police repression during the October 1st referendum has made headlines again. The Interior Minister, Juan Ignacio Zoido, in a statement in the Senate, said that the security forces acted appropriately since some of the protesters were hostile. The use of these agents cost the state 87 million euros.
Había muchos ciudadanos pacíficos.
There were many peaceful citizens, but I have to say that among those people that went out to vote, there were organized and coordinated radical people infiltrate.
Y coordinados.
It remains unknown if Charles Puigdemont can be sworn in remotely as president. Puigdemont and 2 other lawmakers are in Belgium and have formally requested to delegate their vote inside Parliament. The main challenge for this institution will be the quest for independence from Spain.
And with this, we've come to the end of this morning news brief. These and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
Pueblo es su memoria, de dónde venimos, quiénes somos, para poder decir a dónde vamos. Cuando me preguntan qué personajes de la revolución del siglo XX en América Latina me conmueven,